Well, as we record this on a Monday night, we are 75 days away from Florida State, Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland. What better time than to try to rank the top five quarterbacks in each conference? We've got the Big Ten, we've got the ACC on this episode of the Three Technique.
One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They get it to Rogers. They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Welcome in one and all to another fine episode of the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and Joes. My name's Trey Reeves. I'm in the host chair this evening as Mitch prepares for his nuptials, and they're going to be very, very tight in a couple of weeks, giving him some time off and letting the kids play here. Garrett Turney joins me. As always, sir, how are you?
9-9. Anyways, no, I'm doing pretty good, man. We had a nice night last night. That was a lot of fun at the baseball game. That was a good time. I know that we're a college football podcast, but college baseball can get just about as lit as anything else if you're in contention late in the season. So that was a fun time. It was good going out there and watching our beloved Aggies go secure their spot. And now we get to go think about Omaha and, maybe road tripping up there, spending some time in Nebraska. Who knows?
Yeah, if you have some recs for Omaha, send them our way at 3TechPod on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, all our new Nebraska fans, help us out. Like, we got so many Nebraska fans from that video. Tell us where we need to go. Tell us the food recs. Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. We are really excited about the run our Ags are on right now. Just super fun to watch all season long. And yeah, if you have not checked out baseball, there's no better time to get into college baseball than the College World Series. Super Regionals wrapping up tonight, I think. Georgia, NC State. I haven't checked that score, but I'm sure
NC State was up 8-4 just a second ago in the 8th inning. So
I'm 100% sure anything I say about that game will age super well. So we'll just move on. But yeah, get into college baseball if you haven't already. And what better way to get into college baseball, Garrett, than by checking out the collection from our friends at Home Field Apparel. Professional segue right there. They have an amazing retro baseball collection. So many cool jerseys to check out. Tulane, Mississippi State, Miami, just to name a few. And Garrett, they have released the first edition of their, I don't know what the unique mascot series, the obscure mascot series that they're releasing this summer. 7 obscure mascots. They kicked it off with the UC Santa Cruz Banana Slugs. You need a banana slug t-shirt. They got a banana slug on a skateboard. They got one reading a library book. They got him doing everything. So you need a banana slug t-shirt in your life. Check out our friends at Home Field Apparel and use the code 3TechPod for 15% off your first order or the link in our Twitter bio for 15% off a returning order. We thank our friends over at Home Field for making this show possible. And Garrett, we have a major announcement to make. So listen up. This is your first time and this is your 100th time listen. We thank you so much for listening. We thank you for being part of the Jimmies and Joes, but major announcement right now, guys. For the first time ever, you guys, the listeners, are going to get to be part of our preview season. And we're going to reward you. We're going to reward one lucky Jimmy and Joe for participating with a $150 gift card to Home Field Apparel to get you geared up for the season. So here's what you got to do. Head over to our Twitter. A lot of you guys already found this as we tweeted it out on Monday, but head over to our Twitter page and you'll see the lovely tweet crafted by Mitch Mason right there. For all of the power conferences this year, you are going to have the chance to have your voice heard. All you have to do, we'll have one for the Big Ten. It's already out. We'll have the SEC later this week. We'll have the Big 12 and ACC coming out sometime next week. All you have to do, go in, click the link, fill out the form, and you're just ranking the teams. Doesn't matter what your criteria is. If you want to hate rank, if you want to love rank, if you want to do research, if you just want to fill it out and enter it for your chance to win, all that's fine and dandy with us. We are going to ask you for your email address, but we promise it's for a good reason. and more on that coming soon. But just fill it out, rank your teams, and tell us what you think. And at the end of these rankings, we are going to average them out. We're going to come up with a consensus Jimmy and Joe ranking, and that's going to be the order that we preview each team within the conference. So like I said, hate rank, love rank, do your research, don't do your research. Whatever you want to do, go in there, fill out that form, help us out, and tell us what you think as we enter preview season. Like I said, at the end of preview season, one lucky Jimmy or Joe is going to go away with a $150 gift card to Home Field Apparel. All you got to do is fill out that form. One entry per form that you fill out. Garrett, I don't know about you. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to get the pulse of the Jimmys and Joes and really get to have them involved in this preview process for the first time.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's fun to get to go through, the preview season and get to rank the teams and talk about it amongst ourselves and figure that part out. But man, it's going to be so much more fun getting all y'all involved and getting any of our fans that want to, hang out with us and, see, hey, what do you think about this next upcoming season? You can tell us why we're wrong about everything, and then we'll talk about it on the show. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I will say I did try to figure out if there was a way for me to go in and get my entry, but that would kind of be against the spirit, right? I can't go win the $150 gift card. So even though I really want the $150 gift card to, fill out more of my rack of awesome home field merch behind me, I gotta just go ahead and say, okay, fine, we'll let the Jimmys and the Joes do this one. I'll find a way to, hopefully get my home field apparel on the side sometime else.
Neither us nor our households are eligible to win, so we're not doing anything shady.
Yeah.
At 3Tech Pod on Instagram and Twitter, you can find those links or just DM us and we'll send them directly to you right there on your preferred social media app. Well, Garrett, like I said off the top, we are 75 days out from week 0, college football opening week. Florida State, Georgia Tech, the headliner there in Ireland. And so we're not quite to preview season yet, full on. That's in the workshop. We are doing some awesome things, getting that ready for you guys. But just like last year around this time, we wanted to take a pause and just kind of get a pulse of the most important position on the field, the quarterback position. Who is setting themselves up for success this year? We're going to look at all 4 power conferences this week. And today on our Tuesday show, we are tackling the Big Ten and the ACC. And Garrett, as we made these lists, I think my number one takeaway is just, in our modern era of college football with the transfer portal, new faces and new places can either revolutionize a team and jolt them towards the top of the list, or losing that guy can instantly take you towards the bottom of the list in your conference very quickly.
Oh yeah, no, that's the big deal with the transfer portal, is especially when it comes to quarterbacks. Like, yeah, you nailed it. It's the most important position on the field. And so if you got a good one and you can't find a way to hang on to him and somebody else wants him, they're going to go be good at football next year, and you can be fighting for your spot in the Independence Bowl. So, it's tough to, go through these lists, I think, because there's so many variables now. Like, in the past we've gone through and we've been able to say, okay, well, he was good last year and he was good. So, clearly this is a 1, 2, 3, and then maybe there's a freshman in there that you're trying to throw in as maybe so. But now it's, hey, this guy was good at the G5 level. Now he's making the bump up. Maybe he was good in the ACC. Now he's in the Big Ten. Who knows? And we're just trying to figure out, like, hey, are these good fits? What have we seen? Why did the guy transfer? Was it truly for money? Was it for an opportunity? Was it, just to find playing time? Was it actually to try to go win and compete? There's lots of different reasons why players transfer nowadays. And I think that's making it difficult to try to rank. And you're going to see there's so many transfers on this list. And that's just kind of the new era of college football, right? There's teams that, competed last year. And instead of saying, hey, we're going to have to take our lumps with a new freshman quarterback and maybe not be as good, they're just reloading and saying, yeah, I'm going to go take the best guy that I can possibly find, and we're going to go try to run this thing back and win again, or make it to the top again, or try to make it to the national championship or something like that. So it's going to be kind of exciting, and there's going to be a lot of controversy with this list, I'm sure, but excited to kind of break it down with you and see kind of where everybody lands.
Well, we got a top 5 for all 4 power conferences, and we're going to start in Big Ten country this year. And speaking of transfers, man, the first 2 on the board are hitting that right there. Experienced starters, going from a sitting Power 5 or Power 4 job to try to take their team to the next level and try to eclipse a plateau that their team has hit over the last couple of years. We're going to start out west. Of course, the 18 team Big Ten now includes Oregon and their new starting quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. Garrett, they lost maybe the most experienced college football quarterback ever in Bo Nix. So they just go out and replace him with another guy that has 5 years of experience combined at UCF and Oklahoma. He's the next Bo Nix, man. Like, I don't know what to say. He already has 125 touchdowns to his name over his career, 15,000 yards. Again, 5 seasons where he's gotten game experience dating all the way back to 2019. And he even had more success prior to arriving in Eugene than Bo Nix did at Auburn. When we saw the revelation that Bo Nix saw when he got into that offense up in Oregon. My only question with Dylan Gabriel, and I'll try to have a question for each of these guys for all of our discussion here to kind of frame the conversation. How is he going to respond to the uptick in competition? Because we saw him at UCF. They were in the American at that time. We saw him for 2 years at Oklahoma. He balled out. He put up gaudy numbers, but we know the Big 12 is not necessarily known for their defenses. It's going to be an uptick in competition in the Big Ten, and I'm really excited to see how he handles that.
Yeah, and that's kind of the big thing is he's getting a chance to prove himself at the very top, right? Oregon making the move to the Big Ten, you're going to have to play some good teams. And at the end of the year, if you're in the Big Ten championship game like a lot of Oregon people want, is it going to be Michigan? Is it going to be Ohio State? Is it going to be Penn State? Is it going to be, Wisconsin? Like who's going to be there? Whoever it is going to have a much better defense than anybody you played the last couple of years. Maybe except for Texas last year. Texas had a pretty good defense last year. But outside of that, these are all going to be better defenses than what you faced recently. So, I think for Gabriel, the big thing for him to me is, last year, Bo Nix did such a good job not turning the football over, making really good decisions with the football, and just letting his playmakers do their things. The playmakers aren't quite there, or at least if they are there, they're maybe less experienced. I do think that there's plenty of talent up there, and I think that they're going to be just fine. Obviously, we did a breakout candidate over the running back spot, and how I think that Oregon's going to be just fine at running back, and they got Evan Stewart up there, so there's going to be some talented wide receivers and running backs to work in the offense with. But Dylan Gabriel has to find a way to get them the football and not try to force things if they're running a tough spots, right? If they're playing in a cold environment and it's one of those grueling Big Ten days, or it's maybe a little bit of wind and everything else going on. How do you make the offense go? Now, I do think he has some advantages, whereas, with Bo Nix not necessarily not an athlete. He had good legs, but Dylan Gabriel's the much better runner of those two quarterbacks. I think Gabriel's going to be able to get them out of some tough spots, and that's going to be good. The question for me, though, is can he be as effective with his arm? Can he be as effective getting the ball to his playmakers and not turning the ball over in big spots? Not necessarily a concern, but looking at his last couple of years at Oklahoma, he went 25 touchdowns, 6 picks, and 30 touchdowns, 6 picks. That's pretty good. The problem is with Bo Nix, I think he threw like 3 picks all year. So a little bit of a tick down. I know we're probably, picking a little bit here. Dylan Gabriel's a fantastic quarterback. There's a reason he's our number 1 in the Big Ten. And really, when it gets down to it, you have to nitpick. This is a fantastic quarterback the Ducks have, and it should put them in position to compete at the top of the Big Ten and maybe find their way into one of those top 4 seeds, get that bye week for the playoff.
Yeah, and I think, Will Stein, his offense is going to be tailor-made to what Dylan Gabriel does best, right? It was for Bo Nix a lot of times, and this was a knock on Bo Nix when he got to the NFL draft process. It's one read, it's a quick get it out, it's utilizing his legs, it's doing what Dylan Gabriel has shown he can do for the course of his entire long college career at this point. So I think he's going to fit like a glove in that offense, and he's going to keep it going from where it left off last year. And that's why he's number 1 for me. I think the fit plus his skill set is going to lead to a lot of happy fans up there in the Pacific Northwest. Let's go to a fan base that was not happy with their quarterback play last year, and that's the Ohio State Buckeyes. Checking in at number 2 on our list is another transfer, Will Howard. Again, very experienced quarterback, has seen a lot of time under center at Kansas State. And he had a stellar tenure once he took over as a starter at Kansas State. I take you back to 2022. He's inserted in the starting lineup midway through the year, and Kansas State did not look back after that. I think they beat Oklahoma State like 49-0 or something in his first start, something ridiculous like that. And Kansas State just didn't look back all the way en route to a Big 12 championship where they knocked off TCU right before that playoff game for TCU. So the situation here is kind of a match made in heaven because Kansas State had an experienced quarterback in Will Howard, but they also had a 5-star freshman that they wanted to appease in Avery Johnson. More on him on Thursday's show. Little tease for you. But Kansas State was ready for the Avery Johnson era, and Ohio State had a massive need because Kyle McCord was not going to get it done in Columbus, or so they believe. So this is a match made in heaven, but Will Howard, my question for him is, how is he going to handle the spotlight and the scrutiny of Columbus? Because we'll talk about Kyle McCord a little bit in our ACC segment. Numbers-wise, he was not a bad quarterback for Ohio State, but he was not Justin Fields. He was not what they had gotten used to up there in Columbus. So can Will Howard handle that spotlight and scrutiny? That's going to be a massive storyline to follow as the Buckeyes try to buck the trend of the last few years.
Yeah, and I think you're, keying in on something that's pretty massive here. This might be one of the more interesting cases of backup infatuation that I've ever seen with Ohio State here, where, you have, McCord last year who was fine. He was perfectly fine. There wasn't really anything wrong with his game.
Not up to the
he just
standard.
wasn't dynamic. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of my big thing is, you have this quarterback who, he's throwing to one of the most talented receiving cores out there. You have him with, extremely talented running backs, and Henderson was plenty fine. And, anybody who spelled him for a second, or I think he might have had an injury thing during the year and then came back. The backups were fine. They have plenty fine playmakers. I mean, Ohio State has one of the most talented rosters in the whole country. They got great players at every position, and McCord couldn't find a way to get it done. But really what I feel like most people are judging him on is the fact that, he just didn't beat Michigan, right? Like that's kind of what it's become at Ohio State recently is, we don't care if you beat Penn State. We don't care if you can run the table. We don't care if you can do any of that stuff. We have to find a way to get over the Michigan hump. And Michigan just got finished with one of the more dominant, kind of runs of football we've seen in a while. And so, this is a chance. Like if you gave McCord the reins this year, they probably find their way to a Big Ten championship just based on how much Michigan's losing. And I know that there's some speculation about their quarterback spot. Spoiler, none of their quarterbacks make our list. So that's something to, maybe just go ahead and say like, Alex Orji, we appreciate you. Jack Tuttle, cool. But,
you're not on the Tuttle bandwagon? Not on the Tuttle bandwagon?
But Will Howard. The thing I think is interesting here is Will Howard suffered from backup infatuation because there was a 5-star on the bench ready to go, and he had some wheels and he could kind of run a little bit more. And Will Howard is a pocket passing quarterback. That is what he is. He can sling it all over the field. And that was perfectly fine when they had playmakers and when Deuce Vaughn was there and everything else. And it wasn't quite good enough, or maybe it should have been good enough. But then again, the Kansas State fans, backup infatuation. So we're kind of getting this interesting dichotomy of a fan base that just kicked a guy because they couldn't stand that he was there and anybody else has to be better. And they're bringing in a guy who just left the same exact situation. And so to me, the spotlight on Will Howard has to be just, the bright as the sun. Get your eclipse glasses out. Like he's got to make sure he's being safe and protecting his eyes because that spotlight's going to be bright. And so I think he has all the talent that he needs to succeed at Ohio State. I think he's probably one of the better pickups in the transfer portal for any team at any position, because I think he does a lot of things really, really well. That's going to work great with Ohio State and what they want to do, throwing the ball around the yard and handing it off and all that. But man, I really wonder how he handles the pressure of, that first bad game, right? Or if it's, he's against Nebraska and it's a little too close, right? And it's, we beat Nebraska, but we only beat them by 3. And when we looked across the field, Raiola kind of outshined you. Like, is it going to be the same situation again? where the fans are just going to call for the next guy? If it is that going to give him kind of flashbacks to last year at Kansas State? There's a lot of, kind of mental dynamics here that are going to test Will Howard. There's no question about his ability on the field. I don't think anybody can question he can make all the throws on the field and do a great job. To me, it's about what happens between the years. Can he get it done? Can he get it done in the biggest spots? And then for every Ohio State fan, the big question, can he beat Michigan? That's got to be what he does this year. That's your entire measure of success right now at Ohio State is, can you beat Michigan? Can you get us back into the Big Ten championship game? Can you go put that, hardware there, and can we get back into the playoff?
I'm really glad you ended with that because that was going to be my next point. It's going to come down to, did he beat Michigan? Yes, successful quarterback. Did he not? No, not successful quarterbacks. And that's not fair to the kid, right? Because he could
Right.
go 11-1 and they could make a run in the college football playoff and it could be really successful. But that's where Ohio State is at after 3 years of losing that game. It's
Mm-hmm.
all going to come down to that last Saturday in November. So listen, Will Howard, do I think he's an upgrade from Kyle McCord? Yes, I do. I think that
Yeah.
as a college quarterback and at this point in their careers, Will Howard is better than Kyle McCord. Will he be more successful than Kyle McCord? That remains to be seen. I don't think his ceiling, I don't think it's outrageous to say that his ceiling is not as high as CJ Stroud or Justin Fields when they were in Columbus, right? So will it still be something lacking for that fan base? It does all come down to if they beat Michigan. Kyle McCord
Mm-hmm.
would still be in Columbus if he led a game-winning drive in the Big House last
Mm-hmm.
year. You cannot convince me otherwise. So
If their offensive line doesn't get beat and allow a free runner, and then he doesn't decide to chuck up that ball that gets picked, there's a good chance to go down, kick a field goal, or even score a touchdown, win that game. Like that, I don't think we understand like how. And this is the thing that I don't.
if they do
And
that,
maybe
they
it's
probably win a natty, right? Like, because I don't think any
no. There's
like
a
they
really
won't.
good chance that Ohio State, with their team that they had, I know that they didn't show up for the Missouri game and the bowl game, but like half their team was sitting out, and like Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't play that game, so like. If they brought their whole team, I don't doubt that they're probably beating Bama if they got paired up in the same way that Michigan did. They're probably beating Bama in the Rose Bowl, and yeah, they're probably beating Washington in the national championship game. Like they're probably running the exact same thing Michigan did. I think they were probably the two best teams, maybe 1A, 1B, and unfortunately for them, they just came up like that short in that game. And the biggest game of the year in all of college football tends to just end up being the game. And the thing that I want to, and maybe if there's Ohio State fans that want to comment on this, they can, but I don't understand how and yes, the quarterback gets all the blame, but why does he get all the blame in that situation? Like he's trying to lead a drive, he's trying to get the ball out, but he gets beat and he gets pressure in his face. Like, yes, should you try to roll out? Yeah. Can you try to just throw the ball away? Yes. Well, like you're in a big time spot. You're just trying to get the ball to your playmakers. And it's also one play, whereas like they were in that game the entire way. They were right there with Michigan the entire way. And it's not because McCord was terrible. It's because McCord actually played pretty dang good up until that last drive where he made a mistake. And so, I mean, maybe if Ohio State fans want to comment, like, why was the scrutiny so much on this guy? Like, he had a pretty good season. He wasn't dynamic. He wasn't, one of these guys that's gone off to the NFL. He wasn't. He wasn't Stroud, but he was just fine. And maybe just fine ain't good enough at Ohio State, and maybe it's not going to be good enough with Will Howard if he's just fine, right? If he
It
gets
won't.
him to the
It
national
won't.
championship game and falls short, I mean, we saw what Fields did that, so it's the same situation.
Well, Ohio State as a program has earned the right to ask for more than just fine at the quarterback
Sure.
position and other positions, and that's going to chew some kids up and eat them alive, right? Like it's
Sure.
going to be really frustrating to have kids like Kyle McCord. I think Syracuse is really happy they have them on this
Oh,
team,
yeah.
and he's probably going to be a star for Syracuse this year, but just wouldn't cut it. And so Will Howard, I do think he's going to be more dynamic with his legs. That's another X factor that we definitely haven't brought up yet, more so than Kyle McCord. He can move around in that
Mhm.
pocket. He can make plays with his legs. He'd had a lot of design runs in that Colin Klein offense at Kansas
Mhm.
State. So I'm excited to see it on the field. I think it's going to be a definite upgrade. And at the worst, he'll keep the offense moving down the field. And really, with the talent that they have, that's all that you really need. Let's go on to number 3. And this might be a controversial pick when you look at the results on the field. And a lot of people love to hate on this kid for his first year as a starter. I just want to remind people he's had one full season as a starter, and that's Drew Aller at Penn State. Yes, he is the third best quarterback in the Big Ten as we sit here in June of the year of our Lord 2024. Because, Garrett, for the much maligned season that he had last year, his slash line was 2,631 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. I know he did. I know that the offense struggled against Ohio State and Michigan. I'd like you to point me to the offenses that didn't struggle against Ohio State and Michigan this year, because those were two of the most elite defenses in the country. He was playing Michigan on the road, right? Who did they have at home? Michigan? Or was it flipped last year?
Yeah, Michigan was at home. Ohio State was on the road.
So they're playing at the Horseshoe. They're playing a Michigan defense that travels anywhere and was maybe one of the best defenses of modern college football. Yeah, the first-year starter is going to struggle against those two guys. And guess what? The biggest jump typically in players happens from year 1 as a starter to year 2. You see flashes. I saw enough flashes in Drew Aller last year. Mitch did not, and he's not here to defend and give the contrarian take. But I saw enough flashes in Drew Aller last year to be cautiously optimistic about this year that he could break out and make a big jump. I don't think there's any other quarterback in the Big Ten other than him that we haven't already mentioned that could finish number 1. Drew Aller is the last one on this list that could finish number 1 to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a decent chance he could finish number 1. He has to make a heck of a jump because we're also talking about him being better than Dylan Gabriel. So
things have to go right for that to happen. But he's the last one that I can.
And I also want to give him a little bit of credit here. They lost to Ohio State by 8 and Michigan by 9. So it's not like they got blown out of the waters by teams that were just massively superior to them. And I think with a worse roster and probably, if we're being honest, worse playmakers at the wide receiver position than either of those teams are really working with. And man, maybe Michigan's a little bit where you could go back and forth on that one. I think Michigan had some good playmakers, but neither here nor there. I mean, they won the Natty. But I think, Penn State, they're kind of in a weird spot right now where Drew Aller could make the jump and still not get the help that he needs. They lost some pieces this offseason, so it's kind of a like, who is he throwing to? He kind of has the biggest weight on his shoulders of maybe any player in college football right now because he's got the expectations that Penn State has and probably rightfully should have. They should expect to compete. They should expect to go and be really good and end up at the top of the conference. But I mean, there's not a whole lot going on right now on their roster. I'm sure that, there'll be Penn State fans that'll, show up in the comments and say, actually, did you know there's this receiver that looked pretty good in practice? And I'm saying, okay, give me a proof of concept on a bunch of guys before you, start telling me. And everyone's going to do that at this point in the offseason, right? Everyone's going to tell you why that receiver is actually going to step up and we didn't even need that other guy and blah, 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 blah. And most of those guys are just lying to themselves because they know that, they can't prove it right now and that they're hoping, they're drinking the Kool-Aid. And right now, that's kind of where you have to be as a Penn State fan with your skill positions. But I think you're right that Drew Aller is getting a little bit too much hate for this. Like the completion percentage wasn't that good, but he put the ball in the end zone a fair amount of times. He didn't turn the ball over. That's the big thing. And when you're a young quarterback, you have the tendency to want to force it. You want to try to get the ball into those tight windows because you could get away with it in high school, and you can't get away with it here anymore. And he made some good decisions. The low completion percentage tells me he threw the ball away or protected the football with some maybe off accuracy throws where it's, if it's a go route, he's going to throw it a little bit more towards the outside just to make sure he doesn't leave it inside to get picked. And that tells me, yeah, he's got what it takes to do it mentally. Can he get a little bit more precise? Can he improve on the accuracy a little bit? And can he get the ball to some of those guys so they can make some plays this year? They're going to have to, because as we talked about a couple episodes ago, man, this is a real crossroads for Penn State. And I think this year could be massive for Drew Aller if he plays it the right way, or it could go ahead and crater a bunch of careers at Penn State if he doesn't play all that well.
It is a pivotal year, and they will They will be competing for a spot in the playoff. Obviously, they're going to do that every year in this expanded format. Schedule softens up just a little bit, not having to play both Ohio State and Michigan this year. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see if he can make that jump. All right. We've got 2 more spots in our top 5 for the Big Ten. I'm going to rattle off a few names here, and we can just kind of get the conversation flowing to see if we can come up with a number 4 and a number 5 behind Gabriel, Will Howard, and Drew Aller. So my considerations here, we've got transfer Will Rogers coming from Mississippi State to Washington. We've got Curtis Rourke, who was kind of a G5 darling for us last year. He decides to take another year of eligibility and test his acumen at the Power 5 level. He's coming from Ohio to Indiana. Ethan Garber's out at UCLA. Tyler Van Dyke, the former Miami quarterback, who I think if he plays to his ceiling, should definitely be top 5 at Wisconsin this year. Other guys you could throw in there. Dylan Raiola obviously hasn't taken a snap yet. I'm trying to tap the brakes a little bit on that hype train, but there's a lot of hype in Lincoln coming out of Dylan Raiola. Luke Altmaier, coming up from Ole Miss to Illinois. Lots of guys that could fill out these last 2 spots, but I'm wondering where you're leaning, Garrett.
Yeah, I really want to hype up a couple of guys real quick. Curtis Rourke is a very good quarterback, and there's a couple guys that are transferring out of the MAC that I think are going to end up being really, really good quarterbacks, and Curtis Rourke's certainly one of them. I think that he's going to do a lot of big things. It's, again, you're looking at, supporting cast with him and trying to wonder what ends up happening at Indiana. Like, what do they have at the skill positions? Can anybody step up to help him? But I think that, the skill jump he's going to handle just fine as long as they can put a good team around him. That's going to be fine. And I want to hype up Will Rogers a little bit. I know that there's been some, up and down and maybe not. And there's been some questions. But I want to go ahead and hype him up because when Mike Leach was his coach, he was a very good quarterback. And I know that obviously, nobody planned on that. And rest in peace, Mike Leach. And, we're still mourning that. And he's one of the best that's done it. But when he was at Mississippi State, look at 2021. I want to pull these numbers. I'm going back a couple of years.
I was gonna cite that exact same season, Garrett.
He had a 73.9% completion rating and threw for almost 5,000 yards, 4,739, 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
Yeah,
he was their entire offense. Yeah, he didn't turn it over, and he never really has.
How many passes did he attempt in 2021?
He attempted 683 passes. He only threw 9 picks.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's pretty dang good. He had a 147 rating. So, look, he's a really, really, really good quarterback who I think that Mississippi State program got thrown into absolute turmoil because of what happened with Mike Leach. And again, like, rest in peace, Mike Leach. We're going to miss him. But it just kind of is when you have like a new coach trying to step up to keep the culture together. There's certain things you're going to prioritize, and they didn't bring in a top end offensive coach to come in and run that program. And they're going to have to think about what the future looks like and figure out rebuilding and everything going forward, obviously. But Will Rogers is taking a chance to go play in a good offense, and he's getting paired up with a guy who was just at Arizona and is going to probably light the world on fire a little bit up there. And so I think that Will Rogers deserves a lot more credit for who he is and what he's able to do. I think he's going to be really, really good up there at Washington. And I want to say it again, and I'm going to hype him a little bit, and we talked about this a little bit pre-show. Raiola has a chance at Nebraska to finish, I think, top 2, top 3 in this conference by the end of the year. Right now, he hasn't played a snap of college football. So, if we're going to count the spring game, he's played a little bit, but, spring games are spring games are spring games. But by the end of the season, I think, look, Dylan Raiola is talented enough that if he plays up to expectations, and let's say that he wins, 8 games with Nebraska, which would be a pretty great season. And, if he, can go above that, that'd be even bigger. I think a lot of people are looking at Dylan Raiola as one of the top quarterbacks in the country next year, not just the Big Ten. And he could finish top 3 in this conference by the time everything's said and done by the end. We're not going to put him on this list because he hasn't proven anything yet, and he hasn't really showed us anything yet. But he is very talented and might have the highest ceiling of anybody on this list.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, like you said, Dylan Raiola, Miller Moss is another guy that could be up
Yeah,
there talent wise, but we just haven't seen enough on the college football field. But they could be top 5, top 3 by the end of the year. Absolutely. Really excited to
mhm.
see how this shakes out. We'll go with the vets for right now. We'll put Curtis Rourke at number 4. I don't know how many games he's going to win at Indiana, but I don't think it's going to be his fault
Right.
if and when they struggle. And Will Rogers, I'm really excited to see if he can bounce back this year in that
Mhm.
offense up at Washington. It's going to be really fun to see. We'll take a quick break right here. We'll be right back on the other side to do the same thing for the ACC. Well, we are back with our last segment tonight, breaking down the top 5 quarterbacks heading into 2024 in the ACC. The new look ACC has 17 teams, Garrett, and one of the newcomers has the number 1 quarterback in the entire conference. I'm talking about Preston Stone from SMU. Yes, he is the number 1 quarterback in the ACC. And if you didn't get a chance to watch him last year because he was playing in the American, number 1, shame on you because you missed an absolute show that he and that offense put on in Dallas. Number 2, you're going to become quite acquainted with his skill set very quickly in this conference. He's a guy who waited his turn behind a lot of really talented guys. Tanner Mordecai was ahead of him when he first got to Dallas. He waited his turn. He didn't transfer, and he finally got the chance to break out in 2023. He didn't get to play in the ACC championship or the AAC championship, excuse me, because of an injury that he suffered. He broke his left fibula, but all accounts say he's going to be ready to go. It was a clean break, so he's going to be ready to go for the season this year in the ACC. And man, did he put on performance last year. 3,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. He was 14th in the country with a 161.3 passer rating. Can that translate to a power conference, and can he have those same numbers or at least have that same success against more talented defenses? That's really the only question that I have for him at this point.
It depends on what you mean by more talented defenses, because you may not find some of those in the ACC.
That's true.
There's better teams in the ACC than there are in the American. That's not what we're debating. Obviously, that's not what we're debating. But top to bottom, there's not that many like fantastic teams in the ACC, and I think SMU with Preston Stone at the helm is dangerous offensively. They can really score quick, and the big thing that's going to help Preston Stone is he's got some real weapons. He's got lots of talented players around him at SMU, and they've got a very, very talented offense. Now, what happens on their defense? Can they stop anybody? We'll see. But the offense, and I'm going to shout out another guy real quick. Little RJ Maryland shout out for him coming in, junior tight end. He's scored 7 touchdowns last year as a sophomore. That's a good tight end and a dangerous weapon in the red zone. So I think that when you're looking at what is available to Preston Stone in terms of weapons, that's going to help him kind of accelerate this transition into the ACC. And frankly, I mean, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the ACC. And I was surprised looking at the list at just how good the ACC was. There were a couple of guys I'd forgotten about, but man, I just think when you look at this, Preston Stone has the highest ceiling, all the talent in the world. And I think that he's going to put on a show and put a lot of people, on notice as he maybe upsets a couple of teams en route to, maybe SMU finishing top half of the conference here in their first year in the ACC.
Ooh, they've got a fun home schedule. I'll tell you much.
Mm-hmm.
BYU, TCU, FSU all coming to Gerald Ford
Yep.
Stadium. I'm pumped to be a season ticket holder for
They're going to win 2 of those.
They're going to win several of those, I think. And maybe Florida State, all they can handle. I'll tell you that right now.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be really, really fun to see what they can do year one. Garrett, you're absolutely right that the talent level at the quarterback position has taken quite an uptick, and it's largely because of these next 3 guys that are all transfers in this year.
Yep.
I'm old enough to remember this time last year when we struggled to find a top 5 for the ACC.
That was pretty tough. I don't ever want to go through that list of people again. That was rough.
The justifications for some of the guys we put on the 2023 list were reaching at best, but we don't have to do that.
Schrader, because why not?
That's right. Yeah, I think that was basically our justification for having Garrett Schrader at number 5 is because who else? And he's a little bit more experienced. But number 2, we hyped him up in the last segment, Kyle McCord at Syracuse. just couldn't get over the Michigan hump at Ohio State. But you can't argue with the overall record, right? Like he was 11-1 as a starter in his only year as a starter at Ohio State. 3,170 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I get it though. Like I get it. If you're an Ohio State fan, you wanted more than that with the weapons that he had to work with. I totally get it. We broke that down last segment. But if you get those numbers at Syracuse, you are doing cartwheels and dancing in the streets up in upstate New York. So
Oh, yeah.
Syracuse has an interesting schedule. The talent level and having a first year head coach is going to be a lot of wild cards. Don't think they're going to have the more talented team, but they got a really good draw in the schedule. Kyle McCord, there's not going to be a lot of defenses that he's scared of, just like we talked about with Preston Stone. So my question is, what's his ceiling at Syracuse? Is he all conference? Is he getting some dark horse Heisman recognition if they win 8 or 9 games? Like, what is the true ceiling for Kyle McCord at Syracuse?
I think if he's Heisman convo, you have to probably have Syracuse at 10 wins. And I know that that's kind of an optimistic
I
view, and
forgot. Sorry,
obviously.
that was my NCAA 25 file that
Okay,
I'm
yeah, okay, just making sure.
right.
Yeah, no, but I mean, really, like McCord is very talented, and we've just kind of had some questions about why is Ohio State not okay with just fine, and well, Syracuse is fine with just fine. And in fact, we might be able to put the question, back out there. The whole is Syracuse good? Then that might become a question again with Kyle McCord at the helm, and it'll be a lot of variables. I think it's interesting to see what they're going to end up looking like with this new coaching staff, with all the transfers. Like, it's going to be an interesting team to watch and just kind of see what they can do and how they hold up against some of these other ACC teams. I think that they'll find their way out of the middle of the pack towards the top of the conference. Now, there's probably more teams that'll end up at the top of the conference than there were last year in terms of just quality teams being really good, but they'll find their way out of that middle of the pack and that whole, I mean, it's what, 17 teams now. You're going to get probably 6, 7, 8 of them that are in that fighting for bowl eligibility thing. I think you can say that Syracuse is pretty safely a bowl team with McCord at the helm, and I don't think that's necessarily controversial. He's a very good quarterback. He's smart with the football, and he's maybe not as dynamic as you want, but you don't need to be all that dynamic again in the ACC, where there's some pretty bad teams that you're going to end up going against. That as long as you can take care of the football, put the ball in the end zone a couple times, you'll end up winning those games.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think if he wins 8 games, they're going to build him a statue in Syracuse, right? Like, talk about a complete 180 of fan expectations, just the pressure being lifted off of his shoulders. I don't think
Yeah.
enough can be said about that factor for this season. And I think
Mhm.
he's going to have a lot more fun just
Right.
playing football at Syracuse versus all the pressure that was involved being the starting quarterback at Ohio State.
Well, and you're spot on there. There's not going to be a game where he blinks this year, right? There's not going to be a game where the moment gets too big for him. I don't think all year, because I mean, find me a game that's harder to play in than the game, right? There's not a game where that's going to be tougher. He played it in front of Michigan's fan. Like, this is tough to do, is go on the road and face up at the big house. It's not an easy place to play. So I can't remember who they have on the schedule off the top of my head, but even take, like, if they play Clemson or Florida State, those are great fan bases and great crowds. It's not better than the big house, right? It's maybe the same or maybe level, but it's not bigger than the big house. It just can't be bigger than the big house. And so there's not going to be a spot where he really blinks and gets intimidated by the environment. And that kind of cool, calm, collected could pay dividends in this season for Syracuse, as he kind of keeps his cool, keeps his composure, and hopefully keeps Syracuse in some of these games.
Yeah, road games for Syracuse this year: UNLV, NC State, Pitt, Boston College, and Cal are the only road trips this year. So
Not tough on the road.
I mean, NC State's a tricky place to play. Absolutely,
They'll be good. Yeah.
you're talking, a trip out to the West Coast that could be a weird body clock game, but other than that, the road trips are really
Nothing bigger than the big house, though.
yeah, super manageable road trips for the Orange this year.
Mhm.
I'm really excited to see what they can do with that schedule and with Kyle McCord running the show there. Another transfer that I cannot wait to see in a power conference, my guy, man. I've been trying to, just spread the word, spread the truth of the Grayson McCall gospel for 3 years, it feels like now. And finally, I get to see my boy in a power conference. 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year. He had his season cut short by injury last year. He also lost Jamie Chadwell, and that was just a huge detriment to everything at Coastal Carolina last year. But my man Grayson has 106 career touchdowns, passing and rushing, and his career passer rating, Garrett, is 178.4. Is that good?
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. It ain't bad. I'll tell you that much. It ain't bad.
So I made the claim last week, and Mitch kind of shook his head at me when I said it. That Grayson McCall will be the best quarterback that Dave Doran has had in his tenure at NC State. I know what I'm saying when I say that. I know the storied history and the really solid run of quarterback play that he's had there. I stand by that statement. I think that you pair Grayson McCall, get him healthy, pair him with a good offensive line, a good run game, and a defense for the first time in his entire career. You could be talking about a 9 or 10 win NC State that's fighting for a spot in the ACC championship game.
Yeah, and the breakdown here that I want to go into, I was looking at him ahead of time because I was like, do you maybe have him a little overrated? I don't think so, because
Oh,
if you look at his completion percentage, that's really what I want to key in on. Starting in 2020 as a freshman, he completed 68% and then 73% and then 69%, nice, and then 67%. And that 67% was in the year after Chadwell left, right? And so he's doing this not maybe in the system that's ideal. And I know that he's stuck around and he's given everything he can to Coastal Carolina. That program should have no ill words for him at
they
all,
should build a
even though he
statue.
went to go play for NC State. Yeah, he's an all-timer at Coastal Carolina. But if you look at those numbers, you're looking at the completion percentages, that's already impressive. The yards per attempt, the air yards per attempt, all looking at over 10 the entire way for those seasons. And he only threw, quick math, 8 picks in the 3 years where he was really there with Chadwell. Only threw 8 picks. He added 6 last year, but that's still 14 picks over a 4-year career. It's pretty dang good. There's a lot of quarterbacks that'll do that in a season. And if you're looking at NC State and you're trying to figure out, hey, what do we need? They've had a solid defense for as long as I can remember. They play good defense. They played really good defense last year. They couldn't do anything on offense. They were kind of abysmal. You put a quarterback back there who can complete passes, keep his head, and just get the ball out and keep your offense moving. You don't need to be all world. You don't need to be electric and putting up 40, 50 points a game at NC State. And if he can be good, NC State could be talking about a possible ACC championship game and a playoff berth and all of that if they play their cards right with Grayson McCall.
So some of the quarterbacks, Robert Anae is the offensive coordinator at NC State, and some of the quarterbacks that he has coached to success at the college level include Brennan Armstrong at Virginia. Very comparable skill set to Grayson McCall. Very exciting player when he and Robert Anae were teamed up. Garrett Schrader, in his year that made us rank him in the top 5, 2022, the year before last year. And a guy named Taysom Hill, Garrett.
I don't know that guy.
BYU. So,
He was
I mean,
all right.
he was the offensive coordinator for all 3 of those guys, made them into bona fide stars at the collegiate level. And I think Grayson McCall is going to be no different. As long as he can stay healthy, he's going to lead the Wolfpack to a lot of success this year. Another transfer that's trying to resurrect a program and honestly save a coach that's on life support at this point. Cam Ward at Miami. And this is where we cut off at 4 for the Big Ten. And I almost cut off at 4 for the ACC as well. But I think Cam Ward warrants a slight tier above the guys that we'll debate for number 5 just because of the success that he's had in his career. He ran the air raid at Wazoo and Incarnate Word down here in Texas early on in his career. This is his 5th year of college football. I really like Cam Ward. He's efficient. Yep. He didn't turn the ball over a lot. He did a lot of what he was asked to do. And I think I'm a little biased against him because Mitch and I wanted so much more out of him when he went from Incarnate Word to Washington State. We told the college football world, hey, watch out for this guy. He tore it up down in San Antonio. He's going to tear it up in Pullman. And he did well, but he just didn't put up the gaudy numbers or lead Washington State to anything, more success than they had without him. So Mitch and I wanted more, but he is going to have a lot more talent around him at Miami, and that could lead to more success very easily.
Yeah, and I think that it will lead to more success. The big question is just, like what's the ceiling there for Miami? Because they're going to be playing pretty desperate, and it all starts week 1. And we've talked about that game with Florida several times in this podcast. Go back and find our takes. Don't look too hard. But it's it's a big spot for him that he can make a statement on and then get that momentum, right? If he gets the momentum, he wins that first game against Florida, and then it's off to the races. It's a pretty easy schedule on the first part, if I remember correct, and he should be able to get some momentum as he gets into the harder part of his conference play. And if he gets that, it could be a big year for Miami, and it could save the staff and save what's going on there. He's plenty efficient. I'm curious to see what he can do if he has to hold on to the ball a little bit more, make some more advanced reads. Because, like you were saying, he was running air raid, and that's fine. Air raid's not a bad system. It's not what he's going to be doing at Miami, right? A lot more of that kind of power O, a lot more smashing, a lot more, the power spread more, where it's going to be, trying to hit the guys on the outside, trying to get the ball to your playmakers in space. Can he make those reads? Can he make those quick decisions that he needs to? And can he do what he needs to do to ultimately just win games at Miami? I don't think at this point Miami cares about the way that they win games. I think they just want to get back to winning some games and not being the butt of people's jokes now and talking about kneel downs and everything else. They're so sick of that down there at Miami. They got to be. So, I think Cam Ward's a good quarterback, and I think he's definitely a step above the rest of the people below him on this list. He may prove us wrong. Like, he could prove us wrong very quickly, but I think he has the talent to get the job done at Miami and take them and get, another year for that staff down there.
Well, if you're a fan of some power programs in the ACC, you might be punching air right now because we haven't talked about your guy. And I think rightfully so. So in our next, our under consideration for our last spot here, we have 3 guys. 2 of them all 3 are veterans, but 3 very different story arcs for these guys' careers. All 3 were very heralded recruits. One is on his 3rd school. One is on his 1st school still, but is definitely not living up to the hype that he got as a 5-star recruit. And the other one is a guy that I think could be poised for a breakout year this year and had a very nice season debuting as the starter for his team last year. So 3 guys for you to consider, Garrett. Cade Klubnik at Clemson, DJ Uyunglele transferring back to the ACC to go to Florida State from his 1-year stint out in Oregon State, and Kyron Drones of Virginia Tech. We have 3 guys. We have 1 spot. No disrespect to the Haynes Kings and Malik Murphys and the, lots of other very interesting guys. Thomas Castellanos at BC, Fernando Mendoza at Cal. Very interesting players. But I think it's 3 guys for 1 spot for me, and I'm wondering where you're leaning out of those 3.
I think you're definitely right about that. For me right now, I'm probably going to lean towards Cade Klubnik, and I think I just want to believe in him. I've seen him succeed. And by the way, something interesting about this, a lot of Texas ties on this list. You look at Cade Klubnik, you look at Kyron Drones transferring out, obviously, Malik Murphy transferring from Texas, Haynes King, Max Johnson, both transferring out of Texas A&M. So there's a lot of Texas ties on this list. I might have forgotten. Oh, Tyler Shuck, too.
Shuck was
at Texas Tech. So there's a lot of Texas ties on this list, which is kind of funny. But no, I think Cade Klubnik, I'm rooting for the kid. I want him to succeed so bad. We watched him in high school. We watched him in the state championship game live with our own eyes. He's a good quarterback. He just hasn't been able to put it together at Clemson, and I can't figure out why. There's no reason why he shouldn't be putting it together. I don't know if it's a mental thing for him. I don't know if the game's too fast. I don't know if it's I got to figure that part out. But Cade Klubnik has the skill set and the talent, I think, the top-end talent to be there for number 5. And for any of the Florida State people who are going to come at me about DJU, I want to reference you to a couple years ago. and ask you what you were talking about DJU back when he was playing at Clemson, and see if you had any nice words for him back then, or if everyone was calling him overrated and bad and trash and everything else. So funny how a couple of years can turn the tides. That's the modern state of college football, I suppose. But no, I think Cade Klubnik is probably the most talented guy left on this list, and he should turn the corner. And if Clemson can be anything close to competitive everywhere else on the field, Cade Klubnik has no excuse to not succeed this year. Can he? That's a big if. We'll see what happens. But Cade Klubnik should be number 5 on this list.
He absolutely should. I totally agree with you. But maybe year 2 in Lincoln Riley, or not Lincoln Riley, Garrett Riley's offense.
Garrett Riley, yeah,
will be better for him. Like I said with I can't remember who I gave that excuse for in the Big Ten, but the year 1 to year 2 jump in an offense, Drew Allers, who I did that for.
Yeah, Drew Allers, yeah.
The year 1 to year 2 jump in an offense is definitely something to monitor, and I think that he could be better with another year under his belt in that system. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Cade Klubnik should be a top 5 quarterback in the ACC. That is not asking too much of him. And Clemson needs him to do that, to be successful and to reach the goals that they want to do. I just want to shout out my guy, Kyron Drones, for a little bit. Potential breakout candidate. He had a really solid season as the starter for Virginia Tech last year. Didn't put up gaudy numbers in the passing game, a little over 2,000 yards. Took care of the football, though. 17 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. And he was a real threat to run the ball as well. 818 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. So, true dual threat quarterback. It brings a dynamic that we didn't talk about really with any of the other than Grayson McCall on the rest of this list. So he's a very interesting character as well. But I'm going to go with Cade Klubnik. I will agree with you there and say that he just should be top 5. So that wraps it up on the ACC. That wraps it up on the Big Ten. Join us on Thursday when we do the same thing for the SEC and Big 12. And make sure, do not forget to enter for your chance to win the $150 home field apparel gift card. Find the link on our Twitter. The Big Ten is out now, and the SEC will be out on Thursday. Let us know who you think, how the standings will play out this year on the field. For Garrett Turney, for Mitch Mason, I'm Trey Reeves. We'll see you guys next time.
Gracious, how about